Good evening. Welcome to VDOT's second question and answer session for the I-495 Express Lanes Northern Extension Project, also called 495 Next. My name is Michelle Holland with the Virginia Department of Transportation's Mega Projects Office, and I will serve as the host for tonight's question and answer session. This is the second of two question and answer sessions on the 495 Next project. The first session was held this past Monday evening, September 28th. A recording of that session is available on our project website at 495northernextension.org. The agenda for tonight includes a brief presentation followed by an open question and answer session. The meeting is intended to be informal and offer opportunities for the public to interact with our project team. This is similar to the interaction that occurs during the open house period that we normally offer at the start of our in-person public meetings. Tonight's question and answer session is separate from the project's formal hearing or formal location and design public hearing. We have scheduled a virtual public hearing for this project for Monday, October 5th, and an in-person by appointment only public hearing on Thursday, October 8th. Please visit our webpage. I'll repeat that web address again, 495northernextension.org, to learn more about the upcoming public hearings. On that site, you can also see draft design plans for the project and the environmental assessment documents, as well as the display boards and other materials that would be part of a traditional in-person public hearing. Questions and answers from tonight's session will not be included in the public hearing record. If you wish to submit input or a formal comment to be included in the project's public record, please do so at one of the hearings or through one of the other comment methods that we will go over later tonight. Tonight's session is being streamed live and recorded on our VDOT Live YouTube channel and will be available tomorrow on our project website. Before we begin the meeting tonight, I'd like to review some guidelines so everyone can participate and get the most out of tonight's meeting. First and foremost, we want to point out that we are new at hosting large meetings virtually, so we do ask for everyone's patience and understanding as we apply new technologies and work through how best to conduct public meetings. There may be some technical glitches, and we may find that some procedures do need to be adjusted to improve the meeting experience. Please bear with us as we conduct the meeting tonight. Attendees will be muted throughout the duration of the meeting to minimize background noise and ensure that all participants can hear. When it is time to ask questions, we will ask you to unmute yourself when you're called on, or we will unmute you. Once we kick off the question and answers portion of tonight's meeting, we will open the chat function to everyone on WebEx. WebEx participants will be asked to type their question in the chat box. We will read the questions aloud and answer them in the order received. If you would like to read your own question, just type in your name and that you have a question in the chat box. Once we get to your name in the queue, we will unmute and call on you to go ahead and ask your question. We will turn off the chat function in intervals so that we can be sure to keep up and respond to all of the questions that we are receiving. When the chat function is on, all participants will be able to see all messages. We ask that you only write in questions. The chat function should not be used for any other type of commentary during the meeting. Any individual who does not abide by our ground rules or who submits anything inappropriate will be asked to leave the meeting. Participants who have joined the meeting by calling will be instructed to press *3 to raise their hand. Once we see your hand raised, you will be added to the queue to ask your question. We will unmute your phone line and announce when it is your turn to ask your question. You will hear your line has been unmuted so that you know it's your turn to ask your question. Once phone participants have asked their question, they will be asked to press *3 again to lower their hand, and again will be muted to avoid echo and feedback. People who are watching tonight's meeting through YouTube will not be able to ask questions from the YouTube application. You can certainly call in, though, on the WebEx phone line if you do want to ask a question. I would like to now recognize and welcome any of our elected officials or officials who have joined us at today's meeting and thank them for coming. We'd like to welcome Delegate Murphy for being here this evening. Thank you, Delegate. We'd like to welcome Supervisor Faust for being here. Thank you, Supervisor. And I'd also like to welcome our Commonwealth Transportation Board Northern Virginia member, Mary Hines. Thank you all for joining us. Abby, who will kick off today's meeting.
Good evening. My name is Avi Lerner. I'm with Virginia Department of Transportation Mega Project Section. The 495 Next project involves extending the 495 express lanes to the north by about 3 miles from its current terminus near the Dollar Store Road to the George Washington Memorial Parkway in the vicinity of the American Legion Bridge. The project includes replacing existing bridges at Live Oak Drive, Georgetown Pike, Old Dominion Drive, and I-495 North over the Dollar Store Road. The project also includes building new bikes and pedestrian paths along I-495 and on the new overpasses. Existing noise walls will be replaced and extended, and new noise walls will be built if needed. In addition, stormwater management facilities will be provided to address runoff from the project. The goals of the project are to reduce congestion, provide additional travel choices, improve travel reliability, and enhance safety. The 495 Next project will improve travel on I-495 and along other roadways near the project corridor. The map shown here is a screen capture of the evening rush hour in 2018, typical roadway conditions during peak periods on what has been identified as one of the most congested corridors in the Washington region. The extended express lanes will help move more people through the I-495 corridor by adding new capacity and providing new travel choices with express lanes for carpools, buses, and toll-paying drivers. Additionally, drivers on I-495 will experience faster and more reliable travel times during the peak periods. Improved travel on I-495 will benefit the local roads as well by reducing the number of vehicles that would be utilizing the cut-through neighborhood streets. The project will enhance safety both on and off I-495. With lowered volumes on the side streets, you improve safety. And also with some of the improvements that we're putting in place, we'll be able to eliminate some of the weaving movements on 495 near the George Washington Memorial Parkway. As part of the environmental assessment traffic analysis, the team studied the operational safety impacts of the proposed 495 Next project, looking at the project footprint shown in yellow below in yellow in the map, the surrounding highway network shown in green, and local roads shown in blue. The traffic analysis looked at the potential impacts to about 30 intersections. Traffic engineer studied the project impacts on these roadways using the required regional traffic forecasting model that contains current traffic volumes as well as traffic projections that take into consideration the future land use and transportation improvements. It's important to note that the Maryland proposed project of 2 managed lanes in each direction on I-495 is included in the regional traffic model. The traffic simulation model was validated against traffic data collected in the year 2018. VDOT's traffic analysis focused on 2 horizon years, 2025, or just after the planned facility opens, and the future design year of 2045. The interim year of 2025 was analyzed for two scenarios, one prior to, and the other one with the completion of the Maryland Managed Lanes project. The 2045 design year was analyzed, assuming that the Maryland project is in place. For each year, 2025 and 2045, the team looked at the build versus no build scenarios, and we analyzed travel times, traffic delay, person throughput, and impacts on secondary or local streets. VDOT is following the federally required process for evaluating environmental impacts of the project. The National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, requires that we consider the environmental consequences of the project, document the environmental analysis, and make the information available to the public for comment. The purpose of our outreach and public hearing process is to provide information and receive comments and input. We're going to have our public hearing on October 5th and October 8th, and we'll provide more information later in this presentation. The information related to our environmental assessment can be found on our website. Next slide. Our team has developed a preliminary design of the proposed improvements. This level of design is more robust than it's typical in this stage of the project development, but is needed to better understand the environmental impacts and benefits associated with the implementation of the project. Our preliminary engineering for 495 Next includes the design of the highway widening and ramp connection and interchanges, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, replacement of the 4 bridges that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, as well as the drainage and stormwater management infrastructure. As part of these efforts, we have identified preliminary anticipated impacts to adjacent properties, the necessary changes to the limited access line, and develop an overall cost estimate and a project schedule. Now Susan will go over other slides related to other aspects of the project.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Capital Beltway Express is a subsidiary of Transurban. They're the current operator of the 495 express lanes. In January of 2019, VDOT and Transurban entered into a draft framework agreement to work towards amending the current comprehensive agreement to extend the existing 495 express lanes. Under the draft agreement, Transurban, in close coordination with VDOT, is developing preliminary design plans that will help support the environmental assessment, as well as additional independent studies for them to further advance the project's design. VDOT reviews and approves this work as it is developed. After the required environmental regulatory approvals for the 495 Next project are received, Transurban will be able to submit a binding proposal to VDOT and finalize the design and then construct the project with no public funding from the Commonwealth. Transurban would then be the owner, the operator, and responsible to maintain this 3-mile extension of the express lanes along with the rest of the network that they currently operate and maintain. VDOT will continue to be responsible for approvals, for project oversight, and for agency coordination. VDOT has also been continuing to coordinate with Maryland. VDOT's 495 Next project is being developed as a standalone project that will tie into future improvements at the American Legion Bridge by Maryland. VDOT continues to coordinate with Maryland to ensure that the two operationally independent projects are compatible and to optimize capacity improvements at the American Legion Bridge. The Capital Beltway Accord as announced by Virginia's Governor Northam and Maryland's Governor Hogan in November of 2019, is an agreement between the two states that provide a path forward to funding and implementing improvements between the George Washington Memorial Parkway in Virginia and River Road in Maryland. Earlier this year, a new regional study was announced and is now underway to assess transit needs along the I-495 corridor in Virginia and Maryland. This study is being performed jointly by the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation and the Maryland Transit Administration. It is being conducted in parallel to this study, to our current environmental studies and preliminary design efforts for 495 next. Results from the transit study are anticipated later in 2020. This chart and then the graph below shows our key milestones for our project and where we are, or where we'll be early next week when we have our public hearing. The public hearing is an important milestone in the project schedule. As part of the public hearing process, VDOT is seeking public input on 495 Next project's design and environmental assessment. Once the formal comment period closes on October 23rd, VDOT and Federal Highway Administration will review and respond to comments from the public and from agencies. Once these are completed, the Federal Highway Administration will review them and then make a decision on whether the environmental project's environmental assessment is approved. This decision is expected in early 2021. VDOT will then work with Transurban to execute a formal contract for building and delivering the project. And the schedule here shows what could happen if all of these boxes are checked, so to speak. And so we show that design and construction could start later in 2021, and the project could open to traffic as early as late 2024. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle to give us a little more guidance on how we're going to do our question and answer session.
Thank you, Susan. We're going to be starting our question and answer session, and I'd like to go over again the two main ways to ask your question this evening. Using the WebEx chat, and we will be turning on the chat box here in a moment so that you can begin typing in your questions. Questions that are typed in will be read aloud by our team and answer in the order received. If you want to go ahead and ask your question aloud, type your name and state that you would like to ask your question in the chat box. We will unmute and call on you when it is your turn. I do want to remind everybody that we will turn the chat function on and off in intervals, and that's so that we can keep up with questions and keep the process manageable. When the chat function is on, please remember that all participants will be able to see all messages. We ask that you only use the chat function for questions this evening, not for any other type of commentary. If you're dialing in by phone and you'd like to ask a question, press *3 to raise your hand, and that will add you to the queue to ask your question. We will announce when it is your turn to ask your question, and we will unmute your phone line, or we will ask you to unmute your line. You will hear your line has been unmuted, after which you will be able to go ahead and ask your question. After asking your question, please mute yourself again and press *3 to lower your hand. So we are now opening it up to questions. The chat box is open, and we will start to review questions that come in. I'm going to turn it back to Susan and Abby to lead this portion. So I'll go ahead and ask Susan to come back. Yes, I would say if you're sending in your question through the chat box, please address your question to everyone. So when you're clicking on the to box, make sure it says everyone, and that way we can make sure that all of our project team members can see your question and be prepared to respond as appropriate. And there could be a little bit of a lull as people are gathering their thoughts and getting ready to type in their question. So we appreciate your patience. Okay.
So we have a question from Tim that says, do we have any more detail at tonight's meeting about the impact of the new lanes on adjacent properties? We do have our project plans posted on our website, and those do show what the impacts are based on the preliminary design, at least in terms of right-of-way. I don't know if you're looking for more detail than that. I know our team can provide a link about where those plans can be found. So I think maybe if Justin could provide that link just so that people will know where to look for the those plans. We were not planning to kind of walk through in detail what the impacts are, I would say. And then we have a question from Howard. Since VDOT often builds bicycle facilities before they are needed, since they are less expensive than retrofitting, why is VDOT not building shared use paths on both sides of Live Oak Drive, Old Georgetown Pike, and on the bridge at the airport access road? I would just say we worked with Fairfax County to identify where trails and sidewalks are needed. We did go back, and I believe on Georgetown Pike, or I'm going to let Abby answer that question about Georgetown Pike so he can be a little more precise. But, you know, that is why we are including the trail along the Capitol Beltway. And we, again, like I said, worked with Fairfax County and our own planners to look at where best to place those facilities. I will say that we also recognize, you know, we're in a constrained quarter generally in all of our projects. So Abby, do you want to answer the part about
Sure.
Georgetown Pike?
Sure. So with respect to Georgetown Pike, the plans that we have posted on our website, our public hearing plans, show a share use path only on one side. However, we've been having conversations with Fairfax County staff, and they ask us to take a closer look and see if we could accommodate a sidewalk on the other side on Old Georgetown Pike. We have conducted some preliminary work, and we have our assessment indicates that it can be accommodated, and we will make that revision to the plans after the public hearing, because what we're trying to do is address the commentaries, all the comments that we got during the public hearing. So we will be addressing that comment that we got from both Fairfax County Park Authority and Fairfax County Department of Transportation with that request to try to accommodate the sidewalk. So the revised plans will have sidewalk on one side and shared use path on the other side.
All right, thank you, Abby. We have a question from Ethan. How would the express lanes extensions help if the extension plan is only up until the Maryland state line, since that section of I-495 is always a heavy traffic corridor during peak travel times? And Abby, I think this really is back to our question about the, you know, why build these lanes before Maryland is in place. And so I think maybe you could walk through the slides that we had. I will say that, you know, Maryland's project is in our constrained long range plan to add the two lanes in Maryland, and we recognize the importance of adding capacity at the American Legion Bridge, but we also feel, and our studies are showing, that there are benefits to this project even before Maryland implements their proposed project.
So as I mentioned during our presentation, we wanted to analyze the 2025 scenarios prior to opening of the Maryland project, prior to the widening or replacement of the American Legion Bridge, and after the American Legion Bridge is widened. So we did that sensitivity analysis to assess what would be the impact between the time when we finish our project and the Maryland project is open. So this slide here shows that if you go to the last line, shows that under the condition prior to Maryland open, we expect to carry more people, about 2,500 more people per hour in both directions under that scenario prior to the widening or replacement of the bridge. Once the Maryland project is completed, we expect to see approximately 5,400 more people moving through the corridor on a daily basis, 5,400 more people per hour in both directions combined. So it's 5,400 after Maryland opens, and 2,500 more people per hour in both directions prior to the Maryland project being completed. One more thing that we looked at was what is the impact associated with the operations of those side streets, those neighborhood streets that are currently being affected by cut-through traffic. And if you look at the line next to last, you can see that with the implementation of our Northern Extension project, the I-495 Northern Extension project, and prior to Maryland open, there would be a reduction in the traffic volumes on Georgetown Pike of approximately 9%. So what is happening here is we are providing another facility that allows some of the drivers to get to the front of the line. So people that are coming from Tyson's and from points south on the Beltway are currently diverting to the local streets because it is a faster trip to get to the front of the line to the American Legion Bridge. With the implementation of our project, some of those drivers will have the option of staying on the Beltway, on the freeway environment, utilizing the express lane to get to the American Legion Bridge, and they will not have a faster trip cutting through the local streets. So we estimate that prior to the Maryland project being completed, that would be about 9%. With the Maryland project completed in 2025, if you look at the first column, there will be a reduction in volume of about 14% on Georgetown Pike. What that translates is a reduction in intersection delay for the Georgetown intersections that we included in our study area of approximately 40% for the condition prior to the opening of the Maryland project, and about 44% with the Maryland project in place. And I wanna show graphically what is happening. So when we implement our project, you can see on the left side a graphic that shows the conditions that prior to the opening of the Maryland project, and the red arrows with a plus sign indicate facilities where traffic is increasing by 5% or more, And the green arrows with a minus sign are facilities where traffic is decreasing by 5% or more. And what you can see is that with the implementation of the express lanes, there will be an increase in the traffic volumes on 495, and there would be a reduction in traffic on those neighborhood streets, those side streets, and for the most part, it includes facilities that are currently being congested by the cut-through traffic, such as Balls Hill Road, Swings Mill Road, and Georgetown Pike itself. If you look at the traffic at the graphic on the right, you can see that there is even further reduction on traffic volumes on the side street once the Maryland project is in place. Thank you.
Other areas currently and should be made equal to other stretches. I'm going to turn this to Paul Kohler, who's one of our noise experts.
Thanks, Susan. This appears to be in the area from Old Dominion Drive and north. The preliminary noise analysis for this area has it labeled as barrier 13A. On the southbound lanes. But in both directions from Old Dominion and north, the noise barriers that currently exist are impacted by the project and need to be relocated and realigned. The state noise abatement policy requires that at a minimum, these noise barriers have to be replaced back to the original dimensions that are out there, height and length. And if there's additional impacts that are noted behind the existing barrier, then additional height would be looked at. Now, this is the preliminary analysis, and at this point in time, noise barriers are being realigned, that they do meet the state noise abatement criterion. And a second look of these noise barriers will occur during the final design noise analysis once this project is turned over to Transurban. Thank you, Susan.
Right. Thank you. I see we have somebody that wants to ask their own question. So I'm going to ask Michelle or Justin. Jack Loria would like to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. I've been trying to type it, but for some reason it only shows the host on mine. But my question actually does have to do with the sound walls. I've been studying the detailed maps in different sections. If I understood Paul correctly and Abby earlier, it sounds like everything above Old Dominion up to Georgetown Pike will be affected on both sides. I guess my question is, did I understand that? And Paul, it sounded like because when Abby spoke, I thought I heard that the existing walls were going to be replaced, but then I heard something about new noise walls would be installed if needed. And then Paul, when you were speaking, you mentioned that the requirement appears to be that the wall has to be of the same height as the existing wall unless there's other circumstances. I am very interested in that section on both sides of the Beltway. And my question is, is there any further detail you can give us about the sound walls? Because obviously I think residents are very, very concerned about that. And that's what my question goes to. So thanks for letting me ask it.
Sure, no problem. I try to give you some more detail on that area. So on both sides of the roads between Georgetown and Old Dominion, the noise barriers as part of the design will be removed and replaced. With the widening of the project, there's not enough space, so they will be relocated a little bit closer to the homes on either side. Now, what I meant by noise barriers having to be replaced in kind, when FHWA and VDOT install noise barriers in a location, and another project comes through, if they're 20 to 25 feet tall, let's just use 25 feet for this conversation. If they're 25 feet tall, at a very minimum, that the project has to replace them back to 25 feet. Now, there's other circumstances that do come into play, that if there are additional noise impacts or 66 decibels and greater behind the existing or the barriers that are to be replaced, further analysis for those specific impacted areas will be looked at. Now, another situation could be that the existing noise barriers at 25 feet just aren't performing to the criterion as outlined in the federal guidance and the state guidance as well. So additional height up to 30 feet, which is the maximum height allowed in Virginia, due to design criteria and specifications that keep them at that height, they can be looked at up to that height. Now, if you're looking at a few receptors that are getting noise reductions of 10, 12, and 13 decibels, which is extremely good reduction, additional height most likely wouldn't be looked at. But if you are seeing impacts in that area, you would be looking at further height of the noise barrier. I hope that answers your questions. I know it's a little difficult to explain this over the virtual aspect of this, but.
Well, I think I understood what you were saying, and it was helpful. Obviously interested in learning more, but thanks for that.
Sure.
Can I ask another quick question? Do I understand correctly that all 4 bridges are going to be completely replaced, or is it more of a refurb, or is it complete replacements?
The bridges that Abby mentioned are being completely replaced because they need to be widened to make additional space for the express lanes.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And just to confirm, I may reach out to Chris Chalco. Can you confirm that those walls that Paul mentioned on both sides of the Beltway are impacted with the construction? Because I think there may be some areas where they're retained, but I just wanted to confirm.
Susan, you are correct. So some of the noise barriers north of Georgetown Pike are remaining intact. I was specifically talking about between Georgetown and Old Dominion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Chris has got the plans up showing some of those areas.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of houses that are close between Old Dominion and Georgetown Pike. So no, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that graphic is helpful. Thanks.
Sure thing.
Okay. So we have another question from Francis that said, in the session, I did not hear any information on how you plan to mitigate the impact of neighborhoods during the project, and for example, noise and traffic. I know one of the things that is always a concern in a situation where you have existing noise walls and those noise walls are impacted, there is a time period during construction often where the existing noise wall has to come down before you can put up the new wall. And you can see if you drive along the 66 corridor, you can see some of the impact of that. One of the things that we did in that contract that we're looking to include in a contract like this is to minimize the amount of time that those walls are down. So existing walls, we wouldn't want them to all come down the first day of construction and not come back until the very end. What we stipulate is that once they start coming down, that there's then continuous work in that area to get those walls back up and in place. But they're often, just because of the tight constraints, physical constraints in the corridor, we do have that time period where you may have a wall today that you may have a time period where the wall has to come down so that they can construct the new relocated wall. In terms of, the other thing I would say is just that sound walls are meant to provide noise reduction for highway traffic noise, not for construction noise. Construction noise can be, percussive type noise, or it's not that kind of white noise background that you would have on typical highway noise. That's kind of a constant noise. And so the walls are really not designed for that. Now, they do provide that function when they're there, but we do not typically try to provide noise reduction during construction. In terms of traffic, we will have a traffic management plan in place where we try to, we will make every effort that we can to minimize construction traffic or traffic congestion because of construction. We will limit the number of hours and when the contractor can actually take a lane of the beltway so that they can get their work done. Typically, that's going to be during off-peak times, off-peak travel times. And we will also look at other travel demand things that we can do, such as encouraging, carpooling, teleworking, if there's any kind of transit that we can support in the area. We also typically would look to have safety service patrol beefed up in this area to make sure that if there is a vehicle breakdown or a vehicle, safety need in the corridor, that will have adequate coverage in the area. So we'll look at all the tools that we have to try to minimize the traffic congestion during construction. Let me just see. So there's a question about right of way. I believe it says, when is Transurban expecting to negotiate with affected homeowners on compensation for taking land? And I will just say this is a very typical method way that we distribute the responsibility, that the design builder will be responsible to do the right of way acquisition that is needed for the project, but for every parcel that is appraised prior to negotiations, VDOT reviews and approves those appraisals prior to, and we also have a approval process, review process during negotiations. In terms of when that would happen, it would likely not be, it certainly wouldn't be before we have an agreement with Transurban, which is not expected until 2021. And then there will be some more design work that needs to be done to complete the design farther than what it is before they can know exactly where those areas are. So I would say at the earliest, it would be later in 2021. There is another question from Craig Tenney asking, how are updates on the area of disturbance for specific neighborhoods and households being communicated? So I think this is really through our the plans that we have online. You can see what the limit of disturbance is on the preliminary plans. That sets a what the maximum footprint we anticipate is. Now, it can be adjusted both directions as we move through the final design, but we would expect those to be fairly minor as we identify specific areas in terms of what would need to be acquired from neighborhoods or adjacent properties. That would be done through both our website as well as during our right-of-way procurement process. I think, so now we're at a pause for some incoming questions. And I guess, Michelle, I would turn it back to you to see if there are some questions from our phone lines.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Susan. We do have one caller with a raised hand. Last two digits of your phone number are 73, and we're going to go ahead and unmute your line.
Thank you. Susan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Susan, this is April Georgeless. Susan, on Monday, September 28th, you said that the October 5th hearing is the same as the one postponed on March 12th. Yes, both are rushed, inappropriate, way too early sham hearings. Yes, there still have been no promised public meetings since May 20th, 2019 to update the public on plan design changes. Yes, there were many unanswered questions before March 12th. There are the same questions and more questions now that are unanswered by VDOT. Yes, there are many plan changes since May 20th, 2019 that are still not clearly publicly revealed, listed, and explained by engineers to the tax-paying public on 495 Next impacted regions. Requested meetings before March 12th did not occur. Plan elevations for the GW and Live Oak area that I requested repeatedly for elevations for the 3 new flyover ramps, new raised access ramp from Maryland to 193, new raised bridge to Live Oak Drive, the moving of Live Oak Drive and tree removals have not been forthcoming. Historic Langley Swim Club with 1,000 members requested a VDOT meeting before the March 12th sham hearing. It was denied and still has not occurred as far as membership knows. Historic Langley Club on Live Oak Drive will be devastated, ruined by the 495's horrifically increased noise level alone from the 4 new hot lanes, 3 flyover ramps, new raised ramp to 193, all near the club. Just as for March 12th sham hearing, yes, COVID-19 still looms and endangers our health and lives. For the proposed hearings with a short virtual on October 5th, which makes no sense for 2 hours. Why the rush to a sham hearing? 495 Next shows no benefits, real public benefits. VDOT has not demonstrated the project is in the public interest or if there is a purpose and need. General traffic congestion will increase northbound to the bottlenecked choke point GW area before the bridge. Supervisor Faust said to BOS that traffic congestion will be worse at GW area north, that this is not the right time for this project. There will be meetings, many meetings. I have 3 questions. Why the rush to the October 5th inappropriate, way too early sham hearing? How does VDOT justify this rush to a sham hearing? Please give reasons. VDOT works for the taxpayers and their elected officials, not financially frail Transurban. Who authorized the rush to this inappropriate, way too early sham hearing? And this is my 3rd time asking the question. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me say the information on the plans has been posted since February 26th and it's been available since then. We're here tonight, again, to answer questions as we were Monday night. And so we hope that this will, help to give the public an opportunity to, whatever their questions are, to ask those questions and have a discussion about those answers. In terms of, I know you did ask this question on Monday night about who authorized, and I did try to answer it because it's not really a single person, it's an agency decision that was made. So, we followed our typical format. We've worked with our federal partners, our local partners, a number of people. And so it's not really like it's a VDOT decision. So, if you want to send something to the commissioner or the secretary or someone, it is an agency decision. In terms of there have been no plan changes since the plans were posted on February 26th. So, now we will expect to see some changes. Abby talked about one that we know is coming because of comments and input. So, you would expect to see some changes as we gather input from the public and as we try to address comments, that those do require us to, or, do sometimes result in changes to the plans themselves. So we talked about the sidewalk at Georgetown Pike, which is not currently shown on the plans that we have out there today. So we would expect to see that as we move forward.
Susan, there have been many changes since May 20th, 2019 that have not been divulged to the public. May 20th, 2019 was our last public meeting.
But that's where I'm saying all those plans, I don't know what you mean by divulge, because those plans are
available. You didn't alert us 2 weeks and 1 week before the March 12th. You dumped the plans. We were supposed to have 4 weeks to review, as you promised in that May 20th, 2019 meeting. We didn't. We weren't even notified of changes. There were no lists of the changes. We need a list of the changes since May 20th, 2019, with the engineering explanation to the public in public meetings. And we need to have the study impacts of each change since May 20th, 2019. And any changes, you keep saying February 26th we posted, that is inadequate. That's totally inadequate. We can't do a treasure hunt. The public does not know what to look for. The public does not know what to ask. The public does not understand, and you're rushing a sham hearing for October 5th because of an agency decision. We need to have records, and would you please forward to me the emails around this agency decision? I want to have copies of all of the correspondence, and please copy our officials, our Board of Supervisors, especially Supervisor Faust, Senator Favola, and our Delegate Murphy, and others. I think our officials should be copied by this agency decision, because if they weren't part of it and didn't know about it, and most of our officials cannot explain the EA and the plans. They cannot explain it to us. They don't understand it. We need more public meetings, not this sham hearing, Susan. And evasive answers like to the gentleman about what happens before the bridge, it's increased congestion. And if people are still trying to get to the front of the line, you're going to have hot lanes piling in before the bridge into the jammed merge lanes choke point that's increased and worsened before the GW area. It's going to be a disaster. And there's no purpose or reason for this right now. Maryland is in discussions. They have tons of legislators who are asking to reevaluate the Maryland DEIS plans. There are groups fighting Maryland plans. We're nowhere near this, let alone a 495 next standalone, which does not stand alone for purpose and need and benefit of the community. Thank you, Susan. But we'd appreciate non-evasive answers and circular answers. We want direct detailing in public meetings. Thank you, Susan.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have 2 more questions that have come in through the chat box. I'm going to suggest that we move to them, and then we have also reopened the chat box, so anyone else who has questions can certainly send them in through the chat box or by raising your hand through your phone call by pressing *3.
Okay, we have a question from Carol Walter. Am I starting at the right place, Michelle? It looked to me.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay, great. Carol Walter has asked, wouldn't a metro lane be better for the environment and move more people than express lanes? In this quarter, when the 495 express lanes were originally studied back in the 2000, I want to say 7, 8, 9 timeframe, a variety of alternatives were looked at. That was one that was studied but not considered further. And so, we are extending an existing system of express lanes in this area. And our focus is on moving more people. And the way that we do that is by providing the express lanes. We encourage carpooling, and we provide a place for buses to be able to have trips with reliable times. Today, bus service, there is no bus service across the American Legion Bridge, and that is because buses get stuck in all of the same traffic that everybody else is in, and it's difficult for them to attract riders when they have unpredictable times. And so by providing the express lanes that ultimately connect into Maryland's system, we'll be able to do that. And so, I think we spoke a little bit about, Abby talked about our purpose and need and our focus on moving more people. And in terms of investment in the corridor, that this was the option that was selected and that we are now extending. Dave Wunderlich is asking, my question relates to the multi-use path that runs behind the southbound lane sound wall. There do not appear to be any access points from any of the neighborhoods between Old Dominion Drive and Georgetown Pike and at Old Dominion. It appears to terminate just east and west of the overpass where there's no existing sidewalk or path. Can you provide more details on how users would access this path, especially from the southern end? And I'm going to ask Chris to show the plans and kind of walk us through those connections.
Sure thing. Sure thing, Susan. Let me just get that up and running here. Yeah, so this project proposes to construct a segment of shared use path that will connect up Lewinsville Road and the existing bicycle lanes on Lewinsville Road up to Georgetown Pike and upwards along Balls Hill Road. We do have access from Old Dominion Drive via this connection ramp that will allow users to get from up above down to the main path. And we're essentially constructing this in conjunction with, or in discussions with Fairfax County in their long-term, long-range bicycle network plan. And so it's anticipated that at some point in time, they may go ahead and make further extensions from this piece. There is another connection that we're proposing to the Spencer Road and Spencer Court area. This may be another thing that is forthcoming after the design public hearing. Can't remember if this is up on the website yet or not. And then, similarly along Georgetown Pike, and then the neighborhoods around Balls Hill Road and the middle school will be able to have access to the trail through these trailheads.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so I think, Bill, the next question is from Yvette White, which is building additional lanes for driving is disruptive. Additional noise, pollution, cost, and so forth. Therefore, why does VDOT continue to focus on level of service or lanes for I'm not sure what that LOS, but maybe it's level of service for driving instead of supporting mass and active transportation modes, which are much more effective for moving people. Further, lane expansion is counterproductive to offsetting climate goals that are being set by various counties, including Fairfax, Arlington, Montgomery. Thus, why is 495 widening even being considered? I think I did speak a little bit previously about the fact that we view these managed lanes as providing a place where mass transit in the form of buses, carpools, and van pools can be much more effective. So, you know, we're not really just adding lanes, we're adding managed lanes, which provides this system. And I will say for our future, when we look at in 20 years, you know, what does the roadway look like? We are not building ourselves out of congestion. There is so much unmet demand in this corridor. That's not our goal. Our goal is to provide an area to reduce congestion to the extent that we can, but also understanding that we need to limit our footprint and to try to make what systems we have out there are as effective as possible. And then in terms of, you know, active transportation, I mean, we are providing more opportunities for moving with the pedestrian path, the shared use path that we're providing in the corridor. So there's a question here. It says, where can we see the plans for the bridge? Don't see anything on the website, only areas if impacted. And I'm not sure, I'm assuming you mean the bridge, the American Legion Bridge. I mean, the bridge design is part of Maryland's project. So Maryland's project actually extends to the vicinity of the George Washington Memorial Parkway. They will connect in with ramps to and from the north. And will extend down into that area. So the George Washington Memorial Bridge is actually reconstructing that and making space at that bridge is actually part of the work that they will be doing when they bring that new capacity online at the American Legion Bridge. And there are I think their plans are not as far along as ours because they're, you know, doing, they're earlier in their NEPA study, their environmental impact statement that they are working on. And so their plans don't have as much detail as what you will see with our plans. So there's also a question that says, why is there no information on an alternative? The EPA robustly urged other alternatives to be studied. Why not? I'm going to start this answer, but we may want to turn to one of our environmental experts, and I'm not sure who's got the lead for tonight on this. I know Scott Smizek is on and some others, but I'll kind of start a little bit just talking about the fact that we do work with our FHWA partners to determine, they are really the ones that determine what type of study needs to be done. The fact that this is in an existing corridor and the proposal is to extend an existing system kind of set the stage for us to have somewhat of a limited look at, really we're just looking at the build and the no build as our two alternatives. We do have some options in there that we looked at, but generally because we're in a corridor where we're widening and we're extending an existing system. But I'm going to kind of open the mic for our other environmental experts if they want to step in and add anything.
Yeah, hi, Susan. This is Scott Smizek. You're correct. Federal Highway is the lead federal agency for the NEPA study. The lead federal agency, other agencies defer to the lead federal agency to determine how many alternatives need to be studied. So the commenter is correct. The EPA is on record as recommending a more robust alternatives analysis, but it is Federal Highway's call as to how many alternatives need to be analyzed. I think it's also important to recognize that when the EPA speaks to alternative analysis, they are looking more at the permit than at NEPA. So much of this alternatives analysis that they're calling for is not something that would be conducted only in NEPA, but is spread out across the entire environmental review process.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Okay, we have a question. Is it socially just to move more of the most wealthy in luxury lanes while those most affected financially by the pandemic economy will be stuck in additional traffic delays if Virginia builds before Maryland? So one of the things I would just add is that, we do see improved travel times, specifically in the southbound direction, and in much of the time periods. I think the one area where we saw some increase was in the kind of the worst of the worst, which is that PM peak period northbound only, but overall we do see an improvement. The other thing I would say is that, there are many travel options in this quarter, including, carpooling and other things that, doesn't just because we have the managed lanes doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only choice that you have. And then finally, I would just add that I know that the data that Transurban has on their customers show that it's a very broad range of socioeconomic backgrounds, that it is not, I know people like calling them the Lexus lanes, and I think it's that's not what they see out there in terms of both vehicles as well as socioeconomics that they see in terms of their customers. So it really is a broad array. It gives people a choice and not just focused on one economic group. We have a question here from Elizabeth. What happens if traffic is very different post-COVID because of increased work from home and other remote work? And I'm going to ask Rob Prunty here in a minute to put up some graphics that we have just on what we've seen so far. And then the question goes on, will the project be financially viable as future revenue may not support the project? Do revenue projections exist? On what data are they based? And one thing I will just say is that these concession agreements that we have, typically they are about 50 years. This one's a little bit longer, actually, that we have on the 495 express lanes. And they're that long because they want to be able to account for some type of dip in revenue at some point during the life of that project, and along with a recovery. And so this is something that Transurban and VDOT continue to work towards, and the project will need to be financed. So ultimately, it will have to be financially viable, or else they will not be able to get the project financed. So I think based on what we've looked at and what our Transurban team has looked at, we are continuing to proceed with the project and working on looking at those financial projections. They do exist, but generally during procurement, and discussions, which is what we are currently in, those are not something that's publicly available. With that, I'm going to let Rob kind of walk us through what we see out in our region.
Thank you, Susan. Susan, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. First, high-level answer to the question. When we look at these types of projects, they are designed and planned with a horizon year that looks well beyond immediate circumstances, recognizing that the area will change over time. And so in this particular case, this project looked at a design year of 2045, which is the official design horizon year for the region as maintained by the Metropolitan Council of Regional Governments that maintains the area model. So we really look to try and plan for traffic in the future rather than things that are happening in the immediate term. That said, we do understand concerns associated with COVID and the effects of the pandemic. And so we looked at our traffic data that's maintained from permanent count stations all throughout Northern Virginia as well as the state. What we'd like to just show you is a couple of graphics that point to what happened during the start of the pandemic and where we are today. On the left-hand side of this particular graphic, you see yellow and black lines that are trending basically around the 0% line, which represents change from the prior year. The yellow represents Northern Virginia traffic and the black represents statewide. Once you get to about a third of the way through, you see when the pandemic hit in early to mid-March, and you see the dramatic dip down, and then you see a very slow tapering back up again, and then a very gradual approach in the days coming up through September to some bit of normalcy for average traffic. This is average daily, this is average traffic in the PM peak. If we go to the next slide, you can see the trends for both rural and urban, and what we're seeing in both Northern Virginia as well as statewide is that as we get further on from the pandemic, traffic has begun to approach levels that are below, but approaching back to what they were within a year ago. Finally, I'll mention that one of the effects of the pandemic has been an increase in delivery services such as Amazon, United States Postal Service, and other delivery companies. And as a result, we are not seeing as much of an impact on trucks and delivery services throughout both the region and the state. And so as shown with the red line here, you can see that trucks are making a faster comeback than personal vehicles. But as we continue to move forward through the end of the summer, we are seeing those trend lines beginning to approach closer and closer to the 0% line.
Great. Thank you, Rob. So we have a question about the public hearing was announced week before meetings were scheduled on the September 22nd for the 28th, which was Yom Kippur, and tonight. Was it a done deal even before we get to have a transparent discourse? I'll just say, we're trying to have a transparent discourse tonight. And we did that again on Monday night. And I will also say, I know Abby has been available throughout, as have our technical experts. Anyone who wants to call us to ask questions or submit questions to us on the via email. We have been working and we are available, and we're happy to answer any questions or have discourse. I know Abby has met with a number of groups in the quarter as they've requested that, and our team is available. So, it is certainly our intent to be as available as we can and to get your questions answered and explain any information that you need. Let's see. I think there's another traffic pattern. So this is a question. Traffic patterns are not likely to be ever as they were previously, according to the country's expert. Why don't we reevaluate the project under current conditions as the EA requires? And I think, hopefully Rob's answer kind of explains where we are at, and looking at the traffic and seeing the traffic come back, even under the current conditions that we're at, with schools closed and many businesses functioning at a different type of level than what they were pre-COVID, that we are nearly back to the volumes that we saw pre-COVID. So let me just see. So there's a question that says, oh, and I see we're providing a link to the Maryland website that has information about their study. I know have been some questions about the bridge in Maryland, so you can look on their website for some of that information. Here is a question that says, do you have any follow-up studies on the existing 495 express lanes, those south of the 495 next project? So I guess the existing, to show what you are estimating for traffic improvements for those traffic cutting through neighborhoods is actually accurate. I'm gonna maybe ask Abby to talk about that. I mean, I think your response you gave earlier talked about the studies that we did. Abby,
So we are relying on the findings from our modeling efforts, and we know from our own experience and observation that once you provide alternate facilities, then and try to maintain the traffic on the freeway, people drive on the freeway. One of the things I want to point out is if you are using a navigation application and you're coming out of Tyson's in the afternoon, it's very likely that that navigation application is going, and you're going to Maryland, is going to send you through some of the neighborhood streets in McLean. If I'll give you an example, if you're coming out of Braddock Road and you want to go to Tyson's, it's very unlikely that that navigation application is going to send you through Maryfield and the local streets, because there is an existing express lanes, and that gives you a faster trip. And a lot of the cut-through traffic we know is generated by the navigation applications, sending the drivers through what it is the fastest trip at that time. And so once we provide a faster trip via a express lane facility, then those trips are kept on the freeway environment and are not being directed to take the local streets.
all right, I think we have one question that says, has there been any analysis as to expected public usage in terms of numbers and types for the mixed use paved path? And I can ask Abby, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer is no. I believe that, now I don't know if we can check with our partners in Fairfax County, because they are the ones that really, were following the, what their plan is for pedestrian facilities in the county. And that's why we are showing that trail along the Beltway. And I will say that this link that we are providing, and especially as it comes connecting into Maryland, is something that really will be a brand new feature. So it's probably a little hard to predict because there isn't a similar facility in this area. So it's hard to know what the demand is for a trail in that area.
Yes, Susan, I may add that, yes, the facility is included in the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. That is the main reason why we are including it, is to be consistent with what is included in the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan.
All right, great. Okay, we have a question about how much of Scotts Run will be affected and how will you mitigate the damage after the project is completed? Again, I think I'm going to go back to Chris to show the project in that area so we can look at where Scotts Run goes along the Beltway. I know it does go underneath the Beltway. And so there is a bridge there that goes over Scotts Run, which will need to be widened over top of the existing Scotts Run. Can you kind of just walk us through where Scotts Run is and where the project is in proximity?
Sure, Susan. So Scotts Run runs along the eastern side of the corridor from just north of Lewinsville Road until it passes underneath 495 and continues on sort of northwesterly towards the Potomac River. As a result, I mean, we are widening the roadway through here. We are very, very mindful of not creating any adverse impact to the existing conditions of Scotts Run. And we're taking measures in order to mitigate any excess runoff from the project. I'd actually recommend turning it over to Brian Melly, our stormwater expert, and he might be able to give a little bit more detail of this area.
Sure, thank you, Chris. And I just want to highlight for Scotts Run, as Chris mentioned, we do have the impact where the bridge is being widened, but in that same area, there's an existing bank that needs stabilization. So as part of the project where Chris is highlighting, we are going to stabilize the right bank there of Scotts Run to reduce some of the erosion coming in. But throughout the rest of the project, though, we do avoid Scotts Run impact, and we are meeting the stormwater management requirements to make sure that we don't have any increases to Scotts Run.
All right, thank you. And I will say in terms of stormwater management, you can see those blue areas are the ponds that are in our preliminary study. We've tried to tuck those in as close to the roadway as possible to minimize impacts from a right-of-way footprint standpoint. While we're maximizing the amount of water quality and quantity treatment that we're doing on the project. And we still are discussing with Fairfax County and with Department of Environmental Quality how best to mitigate both the stream and stormwater management. So there still is some more dialogue that's going on as we work how best to do that. But here you can see where we're proposing ponds in the corridor. Let's see. So there's a question here. It says, though detailed Maryland plans for the American Legion Bridge are not available, could you confirm whether there will be a bike lane across the bridge from Virginia connecting the C&O Canal? Will the bike lane be on the northbound or southbound side? We are, that is really, Maryland does have that included in their plans now that they are showing with the connection to the C&O Canal. They are showing it on the northbound side, connecting into our northbound side trail. So we end up going at the Georgetown Pike is where the trail flips over to be on the what I'd call the east side of the Beltway, and then heads up to the north there, where it will ultimately tie in at the bridge. There's a question about during a time of rush hour, once the construction on 495 happens, is there a way to keep mobile GPS users like Waze to direct them to stay on 495 rather than using local residential roads. There isn't a way that VDOT has, that is a private, application that we do not have control over. So I would, there isn't that I know of, I will say. So there's a question about, would there be any detours during the bridge reconstruction? How would people be informed as to when the bridges would be reconstructed on 495? Again, that is going to be a question for Maryland, because that is, they really own the majority of the bridge and would be taking the lead in doing that construction. But I will say that, similar to, this region has seen that with the Woodward Wilson Bridge and other major construction projects. Certainly there would be a very robust public outreach for anything that would affect traffic. I would not imagine that there would ever be a detour of the bridge traffic during reconstruction because there's nothing close by to detour to. So I would think that just as a basic requirement is that there would not be a complete detour of during reconstruction. Now, what you would expect to see are some significant lane closures at night, so that the work area can be expanded and then that work can be done. So I think that's a detail that will be coming as Maryland gets further along in their study. So there's a question that says, what recourse or mitigation is available to the public if the modeling for cut-through traffic is incorrect? Are there corrective actions proposed for your contract? I'll just say, I know that this, the cut-through traffic has been something that's been studied quite a bit before this project was in place, and it was very challenging to identify what recourse or other measures could be put in place. I know that VDOT did do a project there at Balls Hill Road and Georgetown Pike to address some of those issues at the intersection. It's a challenging problem. And I know there were many difficult meetings, but I would say, if there is the case where more work needs to be done, we would, work to try to address those issues and work with the community to come up with some solutions similar to what we did previously. I mean, really, our goal is to, as Abby has talked about with this project, and especially as it connects into Maryland, is to get that traffic back on the interstate where it really wants to be, because it just wants to be where the trip is fastest. But right now, that the interstate is not always the place where it is fastest. So this is from Elizabeth that said, in answer to my prior question, you gave generalized data concerning traffic patterns. Do you have any data on the traffic where the project will be built and the effect on local McLean streets? I'm not sure. I mean, the generalized information was the information that Abby provided, which had intersection by intersection, whether volumes are projected to increase or decrease. I will say that any information, is somewhat limited by the limitations of the model itself. It is a model, but it is based on data that the whole region has agreed on. I'm going to let maybe Abby, do you want to add any information about the traffic patterns?
Yes, what I want to point out is that what we were showing in the graphics in the slide presentation were just limited pieces of information that came out of our traffic and transportation technical report, traffic and transportation report, and the complete traffic report has more information on the traffic impacts associated with the implementation of our project. The traffic report, in the body of the report, there is information about the condition with Maryland, and Appendix I has information, much more information on what are the impacts with the scenario prior to the opening of the Maryland project. And we'll post on our chat links to those two documents.
All right. Thank you, Abby. Okay. So there's a question that says Maryland will be at least 2 years after Virginia, and it has been said it will be a 2.5-year project on the Virginia corridor. This puts us in a 6.5-year jam. At the May 20th, 2019, Susan Shaw stated that we would expect to see a bottleneck. We're moving the choke point, not eradicating it prior to the Maryland ALB. Why would we not wait? And then I think this is a follow-on, so I'm just going to go to this one also. It says at the May 20th, 2019, June, Susan Shaw stated that Maryland was going to study the traffic benefits if Maryland built and Virginia followed. As VDOT has repeatedly stated, the congestion is on the Maryland side and bridge. If Maryland corrects this, Virginia would likely have minor congestion, according to the independent traffic experts. Why has VDOT not studied this? We request this analysis take place immediately. So I think the question here is about, again, why would Virginia move forward with our project when Maryland, when there will be this delay or a gap when we're complete and before Maryland is completed. And so that is why we did that study for 2025. That was the study that we committed to, and we did do, and it is posted on our website. It's been posted since February 26th of 2020, and that's the information that Abby just walked through. It is an appendix of the traffic study, and it does certainly shows that there's a much larger benefit when Maryland is in place, especially in the northbound direction, which is the most congestion segment of the corridor. Southbound, it's a very good benefit in the southbound direction as you come out of Maryland and come into the newer capacity that we would have in this extension. And so we have studied it. We've posted it online. Abby's walked through some of the details of that study. If there's more information that people need relating to that study or additional materials, we're happy to walk through. I think it's about a 39-page appendix in our traffic report. The next question is, what is the southern terminus of the bike path? Please identify reference materials associated with the bike path. You mentioned it is part of a Fairfax County plan and not necessarily in your plan. I would just say that oh, good. So Chris is bringing up where how we're starting the bike trail. And, I would just mention that Fairfax County has a master transportation plan, a comprehensive transportation plan that includes a network of trails and pedestrian facilities. And so when VDOT is doing a roadway project, we always look to that plan to see what is in that plan and see what needs to be incorporated as part of our roadway project. And so they are kind of the lead agency to develop that plan, and we work closely with them whenever we're doing a roadway project. If there's a trail or a sidewalk, pedestrian facility that is proposed as part of their plan, then we work to implement that. And so that's the difference between those two plans. I believe the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan is available on their website if you wanted to see the larger picture. It's more of a like a magic marker on a big map kind of a plan. So here's where we think we would like a trail. Our study then takes that and then takes it a step further to see exactly where it could go, how it would fit in, and what the impacts of that trail might be and how we can actually implement it in a project. And the county does the same thing as well if they're doing a roadway project. So Chris, do you want to kind of point out the...
Sure. So, so this project proposes to terminate the trail here at Lewinsville Road. There is some existing bike lanes along Lewinsville Road that connect you up to the Tysons area. I believe that there is a project ongoing either by the county or VDOT to install some bicycle facilities along 123 that would naturally connect up to our terminus here. We did discuss this with the county on a few occasions, and based on the scope of our project, there do not seem to be a logical way to tack on an extension of this bicycle trail of the shared use path further south at this time. However, as this area develops further, there may be future opportunities to complete the network in this area.
Okay. Okay. So I think there's another question about the extension of an existing system. Is it morally just and fair to citizens, not to mention wise, to use this loophole to only look at limited build or no build scenarios? And I would just say, we don't see it as a loophole. Certainly our environmental study has been very robust, and we have studied all of both the social and natural resources in the corridor, looking at that to make sure that we understood what the impacts are and meeting all of our federal and state requirements for such a study. So there's a question that says, what about safety on 495? Will this create more crashes on 495? I'm going to ask Abby to talk to that,
So I'll provide some information, then I'll ask Rob Prunty to provide some additional information. But our analysis indicates that the implementation of the Express Lanes Northern Extension is actually going to improve safety in the corridor. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the safety improvements are related to reducing the volumes on the local streets. Those local streets are not designed to accommodate the heavy pressure that is being put on them as a result of cut-through traffic. And in addition to that, with the implementation of the Express Lanes Northern Extension, we are reducing or eliminating some weaving movements as you approach the George Washington Memorial Parkway. So in addition to that, we are looking at the entire corridor and locations where we have identified a need to improve the safety of entrances and exits at the ramps. We have made some modifications to those entrances and exits to be able to make it a safer environment. But I'm going to let Rob add anything that you think is necessary with respect to our safety analysis.
Thanks, Avi. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So in our traffic and transportation technical report, there is a table in there in the safety section. It is table 8-2, and that table shows that the number of predicted property damage crashes under the no build would be a little over 560. That number would reduce to 425, 426 crashes per year. And so the totals in looking at total number of predicted crashes goes down by a factor of somewhere between 150 and 165 crashes per year as a result of implementing the project. Due to factors that Abby just mentioned and noting that by creating the express lanes and by providing the ramps that are being provided with connections at the Dulles Toll Road and at the George Washington Parkway, we are eliminating, reducing weaving movements that are occurring from left side of the road to right side of the road today and separating out faster traffic from slower speed traffic.
Thank you, Rob. This next question is another traffic question, so I'm going to come right back to Abby and Rob probably. It says, rush hour on this section lasts for hours and hours. Will this project extend that rush hour period?
So I'll start answering, and then I'll pass it on to Rob. Similar routine here. Our study, our analysis indicates that traffic conditions will improve during the peak periods, and what we anticipate based on our analysis is that the extension of the rush hour will be reduced, and that's because we are adding capacity to the freeway environment. And we are providing a more reliable trip, on the express lane. So, Rob, you want to add something?
Okay. Yes, and in the environmental assessment, in the second chapter on alternatives, there's a figure in there, figure 2.5. Which folks can take a look at, and it shows a comparison of the no build and the build. I wasn't able to bring it up fast enough before you pivoted over to me, Abby, but the graphic does show that the area of red in the graphics that indicates congested conditions is decreased, and mainly we see, especially in the northbound direction, that the tendency of that traffic to extend for hours and hours beyond 5, 6, 7 o'clock, even into the 7:30 time period, is reduced, especially in the area south of the American Legion Bridge, between the Dulles Toll Road and the Georgetown Pike area.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. So we have a question about what will be the impact of Scotts Run to Scotts Run's Park, and how will you mitigate it? We do have an impact at that park, and it's generally in the area where there's an overhead easement line today. And I'm going to let Abby, I keep going back to you, but I know you answered this last night. If we want to show the plan, I think Chris could do that. We are required to replace any land that is taken, so that's certainly one mitigation that will happen, but there will be others as well.
Yes, so we anticipate a total impact of about 3 acres. 2 of those acres will be impacted on a temporary basis during construction, and we anticipate that construction period to be no longer than 6 months. The 1 acre that we will have permanent impacts, as Susan mentioned, is mostly in an area where there is an existing Dominion Power easement. So we are we're making sure that we are not affecting existing trails within the park, and that we're also are committed to restoring the areas where we do the construction work, and we were in putting in those temporary impacts.
All right, great. Thank you. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left here. I think we're pausing questions, or we're going to some phone questions possibly.
Thank you, Susan. We have one hand that is still raised for a phone question with the last two digits of 73. We're going to go ahead and unmute you.
Thank you. This is April Georgeless again. Susan, why are you not reporting that in the Maryland DEIS, their environmental impact studies, extensive studies, intense studies, that they have found that if Maryland builds the hot lanes, general lanes and local streets are worse. Their 3 choke points are worse, especially 270 choke point. That would cause alone backups and concerns for Virginia, even if Maryland builds. That's why so many are fighting now for more DEIS Maryland studies and inquire into what the heck, why would they even want to build? And it's a massive, massive attack against it. As for 495 next, drivers, as we know, avoid congestion, construction, and tolls. During the construction for 495 next standalone and after build, the intersection at 193 and our local streets will of course experience increased cut-through traffic throughout our region, the McLean CBC, Tyson's, the corridors for 123, Old Dominion, and 193, simply because that's what happened when the shoulder lane was extended without proper public meetings and $20 million of our dollars to create the congestion before the GW Parkway area. That was built knowing with the pre-studies there would be increased congestion there and increased delays in travel time and more accidents. But VDOT built without promised public meetings. And they built to create this construction. So now, oh, we can come and save you. We'll relieve you with the 495 project next. No, it's only going to increase the congestion at the GW choke point area. It's going to make everything worse for our entire area region in McLean CBC and our local neighborhoods. Please, why is VDOT insisting on using incomplete, incorrect data and logic? There definitely needs to be much more study and discussion on this and much more presentation and public meetings with our officials and our public communities. There's no rush here because there's no improvement here. And you also stated, Susan, in a meeting with MCA Transportation Committee, when I asked why the rush, you said it's to force Maryland to proceed ahead quickly. In other words, the shoulder lane made a big mess to get the 495 next project in to relieve that mess. Now we're going to create a bigger mess to force Maryland to build to relieve the bigger mess that 495 next will create. But Maryland is finding they're going to have worsened general lanes and worsened local traffic and choke points. Susan, I think there needs to be a really, really clear-headed restudy of all of this from the governor on down, the secretary, the commissioner, your agency, you, our officials, state and local, because this is a state and regional project. And this needs to happen as soon as possible. And of course, cancel this sham October 5th hearing and 8th. That's ridiculous to go ahead with all that we know is wrong with this project. Thank you, Susan.
So I'm not sure there was a question there, but I will, I did want to address one thing that you raised, and that is the traffic modeling that we have done in court and how it relates to Maryland's traffic modeling. So Abby and his team, traffic modelers, we have been meeting with Maryland and making sure that our numbers and the projections that we are doing match up with what the data that Maryland is using, and that we have made sure that they're in consistent with the regional models, and they're consistent with each other. And so all of our modeling already incorporates the proposed work that Maryland is doing, and is consistent with that. So, whether there's, congestion on Maryland's local roads up on 270, I think all of that is in, and I don't know that, I haven't looked at their EIS study, but I do know that our studies are coordinated, and that we've made, careful consideration and made sure that our models are consistent with what the entire metropolitan Washington region agrees with in terms of what's projected in those models for both the year, our design year, as well as our, the years that we're looking at into the future. And so our modeling and all of the results that we have shown, which we believe to be accurate and correct and available for the public to review and comment upon, do show that this project does have a benefit, both in the no build short-term condition, or in our build condition without Maryland in place, and with Maryland in place as well. And I don't know, Abby, if you want to speak to any of the coordination that was done regarding our traffic modeling.
No, I think you covered, Susan. We have been coordinating with the Maryland modeling team and the Maryland study team to make sure that our numbers are consistent, and we're all using as our base modeling tool the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments travel demand forecasting model. And we will continue to coordinate with them. This is a process. We know that as our project advances and their project advances, there will be a need for additional coordination, and we will be working with them hand in hand. But we have found that our project has independent utility under the condition prior to the opening of the Maryland project, and with the condition after the Maryland project is open.
All right, thanks, Abby. So we have a couple more questions here. It says, this seems like it will really help cut through traffic in my neighborhood. If this project fails, are there other ideas to reduce cut through? I'm really worried about safety for my kids. I would just say, and I think I said this earlier, that, we recognize that cut through traffic can happen in our region just because our interstate system is so oversubscribed in terms of demand. This project will help address that. It won't completely eliminate it, as it won't completely eliminate congestion in the corridor, but it is a way that we can move more people. And again, VDOT would be prepared to work with the communities to address future issues, but adding capacity on the interstate, we believe, is one of the best ways to minimize that.
Hello.
There's a plan going to improve backups on Georgetown Pike and Balls Hill Road. This seems to make the traffic worse. Abby has walked us through those that study that showed that it did improve and reduce volumes on those local roadways, both in the 2025 build with or without Maryland and in the 2045. So our study does show that based on our modeling, we are projecting that the traffic volumes in those areas will be reduced. There's another question from Mike that said previous plan was to close 495 north ramps during rush hours to prevent cut through. Are there traffic studies showing improvements? I know that was an option that the community, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of study around that. It ultimately was not decided to move forward with that. Very controversial about how that might address the cut through situation, but in the end, everyone determined that the best that was not the best option. So there is no current plan to do a rush hour closure of ramps that access 495 at this time. So I think with that,
Susan, may I ask?
our-
Susan, may I ask a quick question? This is Deborah Butler. How are you? So I am concerned about the transparency in these meetings, and by all accounts, I have counted through screenshots the amount of people who've participated today, and it looks to be about 20 citizens. And in Mondays, it looks to be a little bit less than that. So I'm wondering who has taken count of the citizens who have participated, and is this considered a fair and transparent meeting in view of that fact? That's a question. Two answers. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We can certainly post the numbers that participated in the meeting. I know there was also a request to have the names posted of the staff who answered questions, and we can also do that. So we'll add that to our website where the recordings are posted. And, you know, I will just say it's certainly our intent to be open and transparent. That is our intent. You know, if anybody has suggestions about how we can improve that in the future, as Michelle pointed out, this is a new technology for us to use. And we're trying to do our best. That was certainly our goal. You know, that's why we've had the chat room open. Everybody can see the questions. Everybody can hear the questions. People also had the option to view it on YouTube if they didn't want to participate in that way. So, and then you can also watch the recording. So it certainly has been our intent to be open and transparent. And so now
48 people saw it on YouTube. That's not, and I appreciate that this is a new technology for all of us. And it's a technology that we have to pay attention to and get used to, because work from home has forever changed our world. It's a great trend, a great offering that companies want. We have people who are in the real estate market in Washington, D.C., who are preparing for it never to return. And you know what? The world has changed. That's absolutely fine. One of the things that you could do is the idea that this public hearing is not appropriate right now, because people are getting used to this. We have people in this community that are old, who dial in, who can't dial in. I myself am very technically adept, and it took me 20 minutes to get in today because of the WebEx and putting the number in. And so I just don't see this as fair, and I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, and we want to solve the traffic problem as well. However, this is a time to pause and figure out, do we have the same traffic problem? Is this fair to the community? Is this killing our environment? Are we going to put financial monies to Transurban when they're in debt ratings? Are we going to subsidize it? What are the hidden costs to taxpayers? In 2015, the P3 Commission stated that this was not appropriate for a P3 project. They said the state has better ratings. We would be better off doing this on our own. We have given our land away for 87 years for profit, for a highway robbery. This is not appropriate. We need to take a look at the P3. By the way, the revised to that has been buried and cannot be found. We need to take a look at the P3. It needs a new analysis. Traffic needs to be reevaluated under current conditions. And we've really got to band together and get the correct solution for this. We want a solution. We don't want this solution. And we need your help. And I see Kathleen Murphy on, and I see Faust on, and I saw Barbara on Monday. We need all of your help. We need the governor. I'm sorry he has COVID. We need Shannon. We need everybody to come together and fix this. This is not the answer.
All right. Thank you for your comment. And we are at 9 o'clock. I will just make one quick comment, is that one of the reasons that this is what we're proposing to move forward with is because there is no public subsidy, and it's a way to provide necessary and meaningful transportation improvements in this corridor without having a public subsidy. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Michelle and let her give just some closing comments and also, or closing announcements about our public
Did we
hearing.
know that when all the financials are under seal?
Okay.
How would we know
I
in
am going to ask
transparency?
that we mute all and let's move forward, please. Thank you, Michelle.
Could I say something before you wrap up? This is Delegate Murphy.
Certainly.
I just want to thank you for coming forward and talking to the people of our community. And I want to thank everybody who's on the call and who consistently stays, right on this project, because I know how important it is to everybody. I will contact Secretary Valentine tomorrow and see if I can't set up a meeting where perhaps she can have a conversation with all of you. I'll keep you posted on that, but I am so glad to hear all of this conversation, and I really appreciate the work that everyone in this community is doing to try and stay on top of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Michelle?
Great. Thank you, Delegate. Before we do wrap up tonight, just a few administrative announcements. We do have on schedule the virtual public hearing on Monday, October 5th. It is from 7 to 9:30 p.m. You can join it through WebEx, just as you have tonight. You can join by phone, or you can watch it on VDOT's YouTube. All of that information and the specific login information and the links are available on our website at 495northernextension.org. The hearing will be recorded and the link will be shared after the meeting on the project website. The hearing will consist of a presentation of the environmental assessment findings and details related to the draft design. Following the presentation, we will provide an opportunity for the public to provide their official comments. We are asking that you sign up in advance if you plan to speak Monday evening during the meeting. You can do so by going to our website or calling the following number, 703-691-6715. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes if providing testimony or comment if you're speaking as an individual, and 5 minutes if you're speaking for a group. We will have an in-person public hearing. It is by appointment only, and it's being held on Thursday, October 8th. We will be available between 4 and 8 p.m. It is at the McLean Community Center at 1234 Ingleside Avenue, McLean. Attendees must schedule an appointment to attend in person. You can do so on our project website or by calling that number again, 703-691-6715. You can provide your comments verbally if you have registered in advance at this in-person hearing, or you can complete a written comment form at the hearing and leave it with us. We will have the public hearing presentation that will be shown Monday night. That will be displayed on a TV monitor on a continuous loop, so anybody who attends can view it. We will be following CDC recommended health measures for everyone's protection. This includes mask requirements and social distancing that will be followed. We will have limited on-site staff to comply with COVID restrictions, but we will have additional staff available virtually. Here are the ways that you can provide comments to have them included in the public record for the 495 Next project. Our comment deadline is October 23rd to be formally considered and included in the public record. As Susan mentioned previously, materials have been available to the public since February 26th. All the comments that have been received since that date will be included in our public record. They do not need to be resubmitted. Other ways to provide comments following our hearings include completing an online comment form. The form is accessible at our project website, 495northernextension.org. You can send an email to our project email box at 495 Northern Extension at v.ddot.virginia.gov. Please reference 495 Express Lanes project in the subject line. You can mail in your comment to VDOT's Northern Virginia District Office to the attention of Abby Lerner. The address is 4975 Alliance Drive, Fairfax, 22030. Or you can call our phone number 703-691-6715 during business hours. We have a staff person answering that line. The environmental assessment and draft design plans remain available on our project website, and there are also paper copies available for review at the following public locations: VDOT's Northern Virginia District Office, 3 local libraries, including Dolly Madison, Great Falls, and Tyson's Pimmet, the McLean Community Center, and the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And this concludes our meeting this evening. We thank you all for participating. And again, you can look for a video of tonight's meeting and the discussion on our project website tomorrow. Thank you and have a great evening.